president, you get to do stuff like that. Delene didn't even know we were playing that for her, so it's Delene Jackson. She's going to fire me in 3 weeks. Hello, Quanians. Welcome to... Yeah. This is the June 15th meeting of the Rotary Club of Louisville. I'm Walt Kuno, your president. And please, first, like I just did, turn off your cell phone so it doesn't ring during our program. That'd be great. All right. Now, providing our invocation today is Jackie Jones, owner and CEO of Frosty Frozen Treats and CRA loan manager, originator with Republic Bank. Welcome, Jackie.
God of peace, we pray for unity in our meeting today. We have come together as a group united in passion and purpose. Come and help us maintain unity as we discuss certain matters. We pray for open hearts and minds that will promote and accept ideas. We ask for humility to accept and learn from necessary correction. As always, we seek your honor in everything we do and say. So we lift up this meeting to you. Be in our midst, bind our hearts and minds by your Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Now for the pledge and four-way test, Kelly Hutchinson with Executive Director, Development and Community Relations at Salvation Army of Kentucky. Of Louisville.
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now please join me in the four-way test.
Is the truth, is fair to all concerned, will it build goodwill and better friendships, will it be beneficial to all concerned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody be seated. So just a little bit, Rotarians, the microphone is over here if you have a guest. But I just want to say Jackie has the most guests this year of anybody. And then I want to point out Kelly, that just did the Pledge of four-way test, is going to be chair of our invocation committee. And that's a big job, and I'm happy Kelly said yes. And I'm glad all of you all said yes to coming today and being in Rotary. All right.
And President Walt, David Snyder, New Directions Housing. We have a guest from our staff, Kitty McCune, our Chief Revitalization Officer and Legal Counsel. So Kitty, if you want to stand, thank you.
President Walt, I'm Susan Zepeda, and my guest today is Ramona Dallin, Vice President at the Community Foundation of Louisville.
President Walt, Julie James, the Filson Historical Society, and my guest is my colleague, Dr. Patrick Lewis, Director of Collections and Research.
President Walt, my name is Tony Hammond. I'm here with my wife, Jean, who's my guest today.
Great.
President Walt, I'm Kevin Wardell, retired from Morton Healthcare. I too have my wife as my guest today, Linda. She'll just stand. She's very good. Thank you.
Hi, President Walt. I'm Chandra Gordon with the Library Foundation, and today my guest is Demara Blanco, Manager of Equity Assessment with the Louisville Free Public Library.
All right, buckle in. I've got a few to announce today. So Demetrius Wingate is actually a guest of Denise Sears today that couldn't join us. He is the Operations Manager for Supplies Overseas. Michelle Owens is the West Louisville Site Manager for First Hour Grief Response, which I happen to be on the board, so I'm really excited to have her here today. Paris Parada, did I say that properly? Parada is a product manager with the Galen College of Nursing, and she's also, I believe, on the YPAL board, Young Professionals of Louisville. Okay. Welcome. I believe she will also be submitting her application for memberships shortly. Taylor Ryan is with, she's the executive director and founder of Change Today, Change Tomorrow. And is your guest with you today?
She's gonna be late.
Okay, I'll mention her name, Iserene Ford, who is the executive assistant with Taylor. Welcome. Stephanie Davidson is the owner of Davidson Grant Management. Welcome. Embry is the resident advocate. Did I get that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, of Hosea's house, and with her is the house administrator, Hannah Trauber. Demita Adams is a guest and friend of our speaker today, Hannah Drake. And Rensha Allen is the wife of Rotarian Thomas Allen, who couldn't be here today, and she is the brand manager for the Thomas Allen Insurance Agency. And finally, we have two very special guests with us. Dr. S.K. Bonnick is a visiting Rotarian and past president. He's past the 2015-2016 president of the Rotary Club of Agatarla, something like that, something close to that, and District 3240 near Bangladesh, I believe, and his son, Sagar Bonnick, is with him today. Did I miss anyone in the room who is not a Rotarian? Okay, thank you.
So, guests, in the back of the room, there's a sign that says, "What is Rotary?" If you're interested in becoming a member, please meet Craig Sherman. He even stood up so I didn't have to point it out. There we go. There's our Craig. And now, for the rest of the story. Dr. S.K., will you come up to the podium for a quick moment, please? So I want to present you with the Rotary Club of Louisville banner that you take back to your home club, all right?
Thank you very much, but I'm sorry that I could not exchange my own because I have little milk pending.
Life is good. Life is good. We're glad you're here. All right. Now for the main event. I'm going to ask somebody to come up here in just a second. I can't remember who it is, but I'll read while I talk real quickly. Anyway, Hannah Drake's our speaker, and she has so many YouTube videos out there. All you have to do is do Hannah Drake and click on one. I was fortunate enough to click on the one where she gave the commencement speech at Simmons College, and it was so uplifting, and she's such a wonderful speaker. We're in for a treat. Now, who's introducing her today? Oh, it's Delene. It's Delene. Can you believe that?
Definitely fired.
Okay. If you're going to get run out of town on the rail, you might as well leave the parade.
All right. It feels weird to be up here in front of all of you guys. I'm usually running around. All right, it is my honor to be able to introduce our guest today. I can't remember the first time I met her, but I remember the first time I remembered her was hearing her to recite or perform her Spaces poem, and it was just very powerful. I'm hoping she'll do it today if we have time. But anyway, so I'm going to read. Hannah Drake is a blogger, podcast host, activist, public speaker, poet, and author of 11 books. She serves as Chief Creative Officer at Ideas xLab and co-lead artist of the Unknown Project, which seeks to discover the hidden names and stories of Black people enslaved in Kentucky and beyond. Her writing has been featured online at the Washington Post, the Bitter Southerner, and her work has been recognized by Colin Kaepernick, Ava DuVernay, and the New York Times. Today's Woman magazine recognized Hannah as the 2022 Most Admired Woman in the Arts, and she was honored as an Ali Center Daughter of Greatness. Hannah is a Kentucky Colonel, the highest title bestowed by the Kentucky Governor, recognizing an individual's noteworthy accomplishments and outstanding service to the community, state, and nation. Last year, Hannah was selected as a Soros Fellow by the Open Society Foundation and was recently inducted into Kentucky Women Remembered, a permanent exhibit in the state capitol, which highlights outstanding women who have made significant contributions to Kentucky's history. Hannah's message is thought-provoking and at times challenging. However, she believes that it is in the uncomfortable spaces that change can take place. She has also recently received an honorary doctorate in humanities from Simmons College of Kentucky. And before I hand over the mic, I want to say that as we recognize and celebrate Juneteenth next week, please consider joining me on the Journeys to Freedom Unknown Project River Cruise. This is a river excursion commissioned by Hannah's organization, Ideas xLab, that welcomed more than 500 attendees last June. While floating along the Ohio between Kentucky, a slave state, and Indiana, a free state, participants will be immersed in the stories of two families seeking to escape enslavement by boat. There will be poker and blackjack tables, product vendors, and food and beverages. See me for more info or visit unknownprojecttrail.com for tickets. And be ready with your raffle ticket after she speaks, because the drawing will be for a ticket to join me on one of these cruises, $45 value. So if you can't attend next Tuesday or Wednesday evening, let us know that when we draw your raffle number, and we'll draw another one. So it is my great honor and pleasure to welcome to our Rotary podium, Hannah Drake.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? Okay. My mom used to say, Hannah, your voice carries. So y'all don't hear me regardless. First, thank you so much for the invitation to be here. Ironically, despite what I do, I don't do a lot of talking in the beginning. Let's just get right into it. It is difficult to stand in spaces that weren't designed for me, spaces that were not created for people that look like me, spaces that scream, you do not belong here, spaces that feel like sandpaper against my blackness, coarse and rough and painful and uneasy, spaces that are void of signs, but still I can see them hanging in a not so distant memory. Signs that separated water fountains and restaurants, blatantly reminding people that these spaces were not made for them. And although the signs no longer remain, the architecture and atmosphere is constructed in such a way that I know and we know that these are not our spaces. We are simply standing in borrowed time to entertain the master's masses. It is difficult to stand in these spaces and be me, fully me. Code switching my vernacular to make you feel comfortable. Why must my life dress itself up in discomfort for you to feel at ease? Why must my hair look a certain way in these spaces? Why is my gender an issue in these spaces? Why does my skin feel so heavy in these spaces? You see, these are spaces I no longer want to reside in. I do not enjoy being in these spaces. I no longer want to subject myself to these spaces, but then I am reminded. As I stand in these spaces and I see the faces of these two little black girls watching me perform in awe, because I'm a woman with kinky hair like them and skin that looks like theirs and lips that look like theirs, standing in these spaces. Spaces that have been designed in ways that have spoken to them at an early age, reminding them, baby, some spaces just ain't for your kind. You see, that is why I'm in these spaces, being a shout in these spaces. It is for every black person that has ever entered a room and wondered, would anyone look like them in these spaces? It is for every LGBTQ person that has wondered, could they safely be themselves in these spaces? It is for every woman that has stood at the head of a boardroom table wondering, would she be considered equal in these spaces? It is for every Muslim woman that has wondered could she wear her hijab in these spaces. You see, I remember those that stood in spaces not made for them, that marched on roads not paved for them, that sat down on seats in buses not earmarked for them, that sat down at counters and endured the humiliation of sitting in spaces so that one day I too could stand in these spaces. You see, that is why I'm in these spaces. It is for everyone that came before me, that sipped water at the colored only fountain, that marched into integrated schools and knew they would be just one of 9. It is for every black performer that stood on stages so that one day little black kids could know that they too could stand on stages. It is for my mother, that stood in the space of a cotton field picking cotton for 80 cents a day. It is for everyone that will come after me, for them to know that they have a right to be in these spaces, to have a seat at the table in these spaces, to have a voice in these spaces, to have influence in these spaces. You see, that is why I stand in these spaces even when it makes me uncomfortable. And now some of you sit looking at me, and now you feel uncomfortable. But today you have heard me. You cannot unsee me. In this space, I belong. In this space, we are here, and we belong here, in this space. And I'm just going to get right into it. I am a huge believer in cultivating and creating, curating spaces where everyone feels as if they belong. And these things are not set in stone. We are people, and we are people that can change the environment and make an environment where people feel as if they do belong. So I will here, certainly I'm going to talk about the Unknown Project, the story of the Unknown Project, which is a space that was created down on the Ohio River. It's an art installation called On the Banks of Freedom. And it is a space with 2 benches that overlook the Ohio River into Indiana, which was a free state. Many people do not like to discuss it. It is simply the truth. I do not and will not ever sugarcoat the truth. The truth simply is what it is. And Kentucky was a slave state. So we will get into that and talk about the Unknown Project, but that is the space that we have curated so that people can sit downtown and reflect on what it would be like to take a journey to freedom across the Ohio River. So how we got to the Unknown Project in Kentucky, I will start by letting you all know that in 2016 I had the opportunity to go to the Dakar, Senegal. Now, I never left the country, never even had a passport. But I got my passport and I asked if my daughter could go on this trip with me. I believe at the time my daughter was 21 years old. But they let her go on this trip with me. She got her passport too. And the week that I was leaving, I logged on to Facebook and I saw Philando Castile being murdered by the police. And I remember he had on a white shirt and I could see this blood start to pool across his shirt. And his girlfriend was driving, and in the back of the seat was her daughter, who was about 9 years old. And her daughter was saying, "Mommy, it's gonna be okay." And that same week, Alton Sterling had been murdered by the police outside of a convenience store selling seeds. So I was really, really ready to get out of here. I was really ready to leave America. And I felt sort of bad to leave because people were looking to me to say something. And I didn't have anything to say about this. We have repeatedly watched this happen and I was at a loss for words. I didn't know what else I could say that I hadn't said already. I was just ready to go. And the minute I got on the plane and set my feet in the car, I knew instantly, this is a place where I belong. And I was there for 2 weeks. And it was the first time in my lifetime that I saw billboards with people on it that looked like me. And the art looked like me. Everywhere I looked, I saw me. And I'd never experienced that before in America. I remember my friend and I were shopping for some earrings in the car, and we were holding the earrings in such a way that the shop owner wouldn't think we were trying to steal something. And when we went to pay for it, we realized the shop owner was outside of the shop talking to somebody. Like she wasn't even thinking about us. And it dawned on us for the first time, wait a minute, here it's not a crime to be shopping while black because everybody's black. And so your skin color isn't enough to indict you. And so I was determined from that point on while I was in the car to just live free because I'd never lived free before. When you're in America, it is on a constant loop in your mind that you can be criminalized for anything that you do. Shopping or driving or walking or biking, you're always aware of your skin. So in the poem, when I say, why does my skin feel so heavy? I meant it that way because you feel it. To walk into any space, even into this space, the first thing I'm going to do is survey the room and wonder, will anybody be in this space that looks like me? So I'm happy to see my little amen corner. Because it's always a constant thing you will always think about because you know that you're not the default. The default in America is simply white. That's just the truth. That's what it is. So I was just determined that I was going to enjoy my 2 weeks of freedom. And one of those days, we were going to Goree Island. And Goree Island is the most westernest point of Africa. And this is the last stop where Africans would be before they put them on ships and dispersed Africans throughout the transatlantic slave trade. And so I stood in the door of no return, staring out at the ocean, and my daughter was in a room because in this space, they separate families quickly. So they have a room for men and a room for women and a room for young girls and a room for infants and a room for people that would resist. I would like to think that I would be in the room of people that would have resisted, but I don't know. But I was standing through this door, and of course they call it the door of no return because feasibly you would never make it back. And I tried to think about how this looked on the other side in America. And I wanted to see that side of enslavement in America. So we stayed for 2 weeks and I came back and I remember telling my mom about this trip and I said, it sounds foolish for me to say this now, in Kentucky, but I said, oh, I want to see the other side of enslavement. I need to go south, as if I wasn't standing right here in Kentucky. And as life would have it, I ended up working with a group called Girls and Pearls in Mississippi. I was born in Natchez, Mississippi. And they were studying like history and heritage and how to tell the story of Black history of Natchez with art and poetry and dance. And so my daughter and I were going to go to Natchez, Mississippi. And so I Googled, right, and saw the things about Mississippi. And I thought, I really don't want to go to Mississippi. And mind you, keep in mind, this is like now I think we're in 2017, 2018. This is the process. And I didn't really want to go to Mississippi. But I wanted so badly after my mom had told me so casually, well, Hannah, you know, when I was a little girl, I used to pick cotton. And my mom had never spoke about this. My mom will be 74 years old this year. And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, when I was 9, my grandmother would come pick me up, and my brothers and sisters, and we would go pick cotton. And I said, how long did you do this? And she said, I did it for 3 years. My mother was born in Tennessee. She moved here to Louisville when she was 12 years old. She said, I did it for 3 years. And so I asked her, well, how much money did you make doing it? And she said, I made 80 cents a day doing it. And I said, well, tell me, what was your grandmother's name? And she said, I can't remember. We used to just call her Mamie. And I knew instantly that a part of who my mom was and who she was always destined to be was just lost in those cotton fields. So I wanted to see them in Mississippi. So I get to Mississippi, and before I get to Mississippi, the person I was meeting, there's 2 black tour guides in Mississippi. One of them is named Jeremy. And Jeremy said, Hannah, when you fly here, because you can't fly into Natchez, it's a very small town, and fly to Baton Rouge and then you're going to drive here. He said, do not drive through Jackson, Mississippi, because I cannot guarantee your safety. You need to not stop anywhere and drive directly here. And my daughter and I were very, very, very afraid to drive in the deep south, but we made it safely. And it was like we were going back in time. The asphalt turned into gravel. And if you looked around, you saw Confederate flags. And everywhere you could look, there were fields of cotton. I'd never seen cotton in real life. I'd only seen a cotton ball in my bathroom. But I wanted to see what this was like. So in the day, I'd work with these young girls, and at night, I would go visit plantation homes. And in my ignorance, I said, well, it's like a museum. I'm just going to check it out. And Jeremy said, oh, Hannah, you don't understand. You can't just walk into their houses. They still own those homes. They've just passed them down in their families. He said, but there are some homes that I can take you to that have been donated to the Parks Department. So we went to go see those homes. And they were stunning. They're mansions. They were stunning. So when I say home, just think 10 times as big. And they were beautiful. And they still, many of them, if not all of them, still have the original furnishings, the original china, original bedding. One home had a solid gold chandelier, and the china was a casserole dish, and the knobs on them were gold, and they were shaped like cotton balls. And so we visited some of these homes, and eventually I said, well, take me where I would have been, because I wouldn't have been in here, so where would I have been? And the woman that was giving us a tour said, oh, I'm sorry. We've torn down all of our slave pens, or we've bricked them over and turned them into offices. So with this, it never happened. And finally, when we went into one home, there was this huge wood fan. I didn't know it was a fan at the time, above a table. There was a string attached to it. And the tour guide, the other black tour guide, and I can't remember his name, said, do you know what that is? And I said, no, I have no idea. What is that? And he said, it's called a punka. And he said an enslaved child, typically a little girl, would have to stand in the corner and pull this string, and the fan would go back and forth to keep flies off food. And I was so hurt, I started crying, because I was devastated that somebody would be enslaved just to keep flies off food. And he told me, well, Hannah, don't weep for her, because she has a very important job. When people eat, they talk. And her job is to listen to everything that's being said around the table, and then go back and tell her mother anything that she may hear, because there may be a chance that they can escape towards freedom. And then finally I said, well, take me to the cotton fields, let me see it. And the still working plantation, I went to the Frogmore plantation. It's in Louisiana. It's like right over the bridge, same way you get to Indiana from here, right over the bridge from Mississippi. 1,800 acres of cotton, still a working plantation. And I said, well, show me the bags that enslaved people would have to put cotton in. And she showed me the bag, so I replicated that bag, so you can see it today. So can you hand me that bag, Danita? And so I was interested, how big is it? And this is the bag. So I came back to Kentucky and pulled the specs from online and said, replicate this for me. This is what it looks like. It is 7 feet long and 3 feet wide. And I said, tell me how much cotton could fit in here. And she said 70 pounds. And enslaved people had to pick 200 to 300 pounds a day. So I was just devastated by this. And I said, okay, finally take me. I know you're thinking, what does this have to do with Kentucky? So I said, well, take me to the African American Museum. And they did. And on the wall was this map. And on the map was the route to the forks of the road. in Natchez, Mississippi, which is the second largest slave market in the South. The first largest slave market is in New Orleans. The second largest was in Natchez. And this route to get to the forks of the road was in Kentucky. And it was along the Ohio River. And they listed names of enslaved people that had been sold in Natchez. And I knew, once I saw that map, that Kentucky was intricately involved in the slave trade. So I came back to Kentucky. I wanted to know how deeply was Kentucky involved in the slave trade. Kentucky enslaved 250,000 people. That's simply what happened. We cannot change it. That's factual. Kentucky sold 80,000 people down the Ohio River. In fact, the phrase being sold down the river originated in Kentucky. So my friend Emily Bingham said it would be as if the entire town of Bowling Green disappeared one day. So when you hear 80,000 people, please know these were 80,000 mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and aunts and uncles. They weren't property, they were people. And the last thing before we get to the Unknown Project, I started thinking, oh, God, we should do a project about that, but what is it? And my friend Rachel Platt asked me, Hannah, do you know who Thornton and Lucy Blackburn is? And I said, no, I don't know them. Who are they? Like, I thought it was like Beyonce and Jay-Z or something, like some couple. And then she's like, no, they're an enslaved couple that escaped from Louisville, and we want to do something at the Fraser around the Blackburns. And I said, okay, I'm making one more trip. I'm going to the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. This is when it opened. It's also known as the Lynching Museum. So here, my daughter and I drive once again to Montgomery, Alabama, and we were afraid, but we made it. And I said, when I come back, we will do something around Thornton and Lucy Blackburn. I just need to see this art installation first. So I was determined to take a picture of every name that was in the lynching memorial. In order to be in this lynching memorial, your state had to lynch over 100 people. Kentucky is in that memorial. Kentucky lynched 169 people that they know of. 8 of them are listed as unknown. And I was so curious, how do we start finding the people who are unknown? And when I came back, that's what started the Unknown Project. I wanted to start trying to find people that were enslaved in Kentucky, because people are not unknown, they're hidden. And immediately when people learned about the project, what they did was say, in fact, my family did enslave people, Hannah, and here are the names. And we have added 1,000 names to Kentucky's history of Black people that were enslaved in Kentucky. So, thank you. And it's because our history is inescapably intertwined, like Dr. King said. It is intertwined. And I tell people all the time, if they were not free in life, at the very least what you can do is free them in death. And the reason that you don't want to do that is because you're ashamed. And Kentucky and this nation is ashamed of what it has done. But we do not grow from shame. We grow from the truth. We grow from facing the truth. We grow from acknowledging that these people were here. And I talked about this in the New York Times, and I simply said 2 sentences. I talked about my mother, and my mother not knowing the name of her grandmother. My family just stopped. I had no record of where I came from, where my name came from, how I existed. And a woman DM'd me. She slid in my DMs, y'all. And she was a genealogist and said, I read the New York Times article, and I saw that you could not trace your family. I've traced your family for you. And I emailed her back, and I said, oh, well, I will take you to any restaurant you want, anywhere you want to go eat, we'll have a good time. Where do you want to go? And she said, well, this was last year, you know, we're still kind of COVID. And she said, well, I'd like for it to be outside, and I live near U of L. And I said, well, I live near U of L. And we were 5 minutes away from each other this whole time and never even knew it. And she laid out all of the paperwork that she had handwritten, everything. And she said, you can tell your mother that her grandmother's name was Eliza Miller, and she lived to be 111 years old. And so I was able to tell my mom, here, this is what your grandmother's name was. And I had been, well, I have to tell you, because this is going to blow you all's mind, and then I'm done. But last year for my birthday, I think it was last year before that, I said, oh, I'm going to go to South Carolina. I'm going to go to Columbia. So I went to Columbia, South Carolina for a little bit. Of course, you all know that I went to Mississippi, right? And so she says, oh, I did more research, and I have found your great-great-great-grandmother, and her name was Hannah. And we found her in South Carolina. And I mapped it from where I stayed in South Carolina. I was 26 minutes away from where she was enslaved. And so 2 weeks ago, I went to that plantation. And I stood in that plantation, and I sat on the porch of that plantation because I knew my great-great-great-grandmother, Hannah, would not have been able to do that. And she said, well, Hannah didn't stay there. They moved her. And I said, well, where did they move her to? She said, they moved her to Mississippi, where you were at. So this whole time, I was just following my family all around the nation. And they were saying, Hannah, I'm here. We're not unknown. Just come and find us. That's why it is important for people to know where they have come from. It is important that this nation, this state, this city recognizes that there are people like me that are looking, searching, longing to find their families, and they are calling out. They will always call out. My family was calling out to me from South Carolina, from Mississippi, saying, come and find me. And I thought this whole time I was doing this project to help everybody else. But in fact, I was finding pieces of me. And what is so insane is before any of this even started, I wrote a poem called Finding Me. And I said, in finding you, I found me. That is the beauty of the Unknown Project. This is the last thing I will say, and I'm done, but I tell everybody, because we see what's happening in this state with history. We see what's happening in the nation with history. History is like a baked cake. It's over. Once the cake is baked, you cannot unbake it. You can never make it flour, eggs, and sugar again, but you can decide, what are we going to do with this cake? Kentucky cannot pretend. It enslaved 250,000 people. 80,000 of them were separated from their families. That is what happened. I'm sorry to tell you, but it is the truth. It cannot hide anymore. Why? Because people will cry out. Because everybody deserves to have the right to say, I was here. Thank you. I will entertain anything.
Elaine's got the microphone, but since I have it up here as well, I'll start with that. I've got so many. You give talks like these all the time.
Yes.
What is the one question, I'm not asking you don't have to answer it.
I'm not going to answer.
That people ask that you wish they wouldn't?
Question people ask. I'm trying to think. Let me think for a minute.
Well, let me give you the second half of this one. What is the question they don't ask that you wish they would?
What can I do to learn more? And when people, this may not be a question, but please listen to me. When people of color, Black people, women, LGBTQ, anyone that's in a marginalized group tells you how they feel, believe them. Don't invalidate them. Well, not my family. My family didn't own. Well, Hannah, I don't. That's years ago. Why are you mentioning that? validate how I feel, for me to get pieces of me back that have been lost, for me to tell my mother, this is your grandmother's name. And I'll blow your mind even more. At the Unknown Project, a group came in from Grand Rapids last November, and it's snowing, and they're like, we're from Grand Rapids. And I tell them this story, and I tell them about Eliza, and I said, Eliza is buried in Grand Rapids. And one of the people there is a realtor, and she went back and she said, my real estate company sold your great-grandmother's house. And they found her grave, and I'm gonna go leave flowers for her. That's important to me. That's why this is important.
Okay, does anybody have questions? Feel free to come up to the microphone. I will start with one. Of the unknown people that your project has helped identify, I know obviously your personal story is probably the most impactful for you, but are there others that really stick in your mind that you have a memory about, or that you think is a cool story that you could share with us?
I have so many cool stories, but I think certainly a woman slid in my DMs again. And she,
Direct message for you guys that are older.
She had a will, and she said, my family has told this story for years about how my it was something, uncle or something, fell in love with an enslaved woman, and they had children. She said, that's a lie. And I want you to tell the real story of this woman named Eve. And Eve had 3 children by this man, but on the platform are footprints, and underneath is Eve's name, because I wanted to honor Eve and many, many black women. We will do it even now in Eastern Cemetery. There are 3 black women that were with not just people who enslaved people, but the people who brokered in black bodies. There are 3 women, 3 black women that are buried there that we will honor, to say that these 3 black women existed, and I'm certain this was not their choice in life, but they did what they had to do. If you're about, and we're in the Women's Club, so if you're about women's rights and women's liberty, that extends now and goes back to then, because these women didn't have the opportunity to make the life that they wanted to have for themselves. So that's very important.
Hi, I'm Fred Cowan, and I wanted to ask you a question, sort of a mega question, broad question, I guess, but I first want to take the moment just to mention that when I was a small boy in western Kentucky, I was living in Louisville, but I was visiting my family down there, and it was shortly after Brown versus Board of Education, and they were just integrating the schools there, and I remember going to the schools as school was just starting and observing, and there were all these demonstrators outside, white demonstrators, yelling and screaming and holding up signs and all this sort of stuff, and that resulted, you may or may not know this was such a long time ago, showing my age, is that the governor at the time, Happy Chandler, called in the National Guard, which was present at this time and escorted these children, as in Little Rock, Arkansas, but this was in Sturgis, Kentucky, escorted these children, 7 or 8 of them, into the high school at that time. So I say that just by background of the question I'm going to ask you, which is obviously you must have thought a lot about racism in our society, and you well know that it's, in recent years, it's gotten to be a real controversial question among some quarters, at least, as to whether racism even exists.
That's
Lots of folks take the position that, well, yes, we used to be racist, we were slave owners, we treated black people terribly, but now the standards are pretty even keeled, and not only that, we have affirmative action programs that open up the doors for blacks, et cetera, et cetera. And this club, in fact, is doing a special project in the West End that you may be familiar with with respect to housing. So my question is, what are your thoughts about racism today in our society, and what can be done, or what will be done, or should be done to address the issue to the extent that you feel it's a real issue? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Racism undoubtedly is still an issue. Trust me, I'm black, so take my word for it. But it is still an issue, and it will continue to be an issue. The way something stops in our garden is you stop planting the seeds, right? You stop. I'm not gonna plant that anymore, right? But we, sadly, and it's just the truth, we have people that continue to plant seeds, right? And so it continues to grow. And until we collectively say enough, at some point, like I don't understand this. Ain't you tired? Ain't you tired for real? Like, we've been doing this since 1619. You ain't tired yet? Like, I'm tired. I really am. Like, every day, just to be black in America is exhausting. They did a study of the wealthiest black women and compared it with the wealthiest white women. And their babies will still die at a faster rate. Doesn't matter about their wealth. Why? Racism. I'm tired. And I think the way to stop that is do what you all are doing. Break bread together. Sit down and talk to each other. We are not that different. This is what I tell people. You want your kids to go to a good school? I want my kids to go to a good school. You want a roof over your head? Oh, wow, I want a roof over my head too. You want a good job? I want a good job. You want to save a little money? I want to save a little money. There is something in this universe that is telling us we are different and we're not. And what I want people to see, I tell people all the time, look, your best bet is to get over here with me. That's your best bet. If you work a job, it's still robbing Peter to pay Paul, over here with me. You can't get into the sick in the hospital because you can't afford, over here with me. But some of the people who are in the worst positions are fighting me. And I care about the people in the worst position. I'm not trying to hurt you. And by speaking about racism, this is one thing, and then I'm done. What gets me when people say this, well, you talk about racism, it's going to cause racism. I said, when you talk about cancer, does it cause cancer? But what it does cause is what? Awareness. What it does cause is policies. What it does cause is for people to say, I better go get that checked out. It's education, right? Talking about racism doesn't cause racism. Racism causes racism, right? And in order for that to change, we are going to talk about it. And here's the thing. It ain't going to feel good. Who told you it would? Like, who made you that promise? They lied. It's not going to feel good. There are things, think about this, about you personally, doesn't feel good to confront about you. The ugly in us that we all have. It doesn't feel good. But not confronting it doesn't make it go away. You confront it and say, like today, I said, I've just been lazy sleeping in. Everything is my fault. You can't find your keys, you're late. Why? But you're too lazy to hang them on the hook. You caused this. We've caused this. We have to fix it. And quite frankly, I wasn't in it. Black people didn't cause this division. Like, I'm cool. I'm good. I just want to drive and be okay. Like, I just don't want the police to come to my home and kill me. Like, I'm good. I'm not walking around hating people. We didn't cause this. So if you've caused the problem, fix it.
Hey, Hannah. Keith's not over here. Sorry.
Hey, Brian.
Hey. Good to see you when you walked in. It's so great to have you here today. It's just, we need to do a lot more of this all the time. You talk about baking and cakes, and it's already baked. You got 11 ingredients out there, 11 books. So what recipes are you making? What book are you making? What pie? What different different things you're doing? Is there a storyline to all of these? Do they make sense?
There is a storyline to most of them. Most of them will always deal with politics, feminism, and race. Race is the issue. That is the issue in America. And any problem you have in America, I can draw a line right back to racism. Housing, healthcare, economy, crime, climate. I can draw a line right back to racism. What is that in the West End area with the climate? Yeah, racism. Because it's nowhere else. Rubber Town? Where's that at, Ramona? Okay, thank you. Racism. Healthcare, black maternal death, racism. Economy, racism. So until we deal with that, we're still going to have these problems. It's like when you go to the doctor. What's one of the first things they ask you, don't they? What's your what? Medical what? History. He don't just look at you, or she don't just look at you and say, well, I'm going to prescribe you this. First thing they want to know is what you've been eating, drinking, exercise, pills you're on, blah, blah, blah. History. So they can treat the problem. We're trying to treat a symptom and not deal with the problem. We're looking at fruit. We're not looking at the root. And racism is the root.
And I want to thank you for being our guest speaker
Thank
today.
you.
Wonderful. In your honor, Rotary is making a $500 contribution to a West Louisville housing initiative.
I love it.
Which we're raising $5 million in the 9 named neighborhoods for people that cannot qualify for a conventional loan.
Thank
We've
you.
gotten our first 2. So here this part is. We wanted to say thank you for being here.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. Does that mean
No idea where that's coming from. Nobody's touching anything.
We're all good. And everybody's wanting the door prize.
Yeah.
Nobody stays for the door.
So this is the door prize, remember, June 20, 21st, 7 p.m., next Tuesday and Wednesday.
242-1326. 1326.
Hey!
We have a winner. All right.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. Winding down here. If you have any other questions, I've got a couple more questions for Hannah that I'll handle offline with you in just a minute. Before we do that, next week's feature is Brittany Penny, the first African-American woman CEO in the bourbon industry and founder of 2 Cents Inc., the visionary company behind the exquisite 9 bourbon whiskey. Be sure to register by noon on Monday. Also, if you all don't know this, our last meeting here will be on July the 6th. And y'all know who's speaking? Jeff Braun. All right, so get your reservations in early. That's Kevin's first meeting, last one here. July 13th, we are moving to the University Club. And going to try that. They've been closed for a while, and so we're going to be doing that move. So don't be like me or anybody else. I'm looking around, I saw somebody. Yeah, we're okay that went to the wrong place more than one time. Life is good, right? All right. Guests in the back, Craig will be there with What is Rotary. Don't forget to stop by the Carriage Trade Shop. And now for Walt's Words of Wisdom. There we go. All right. And for the guests, this club has had to tolerate all of these Walt's Words of Wisdom for almost a year. Only 2 more weeks left, folks. A poet's work to name the unnameable, to point at frauds, to take sides, start arguments, shape the world, and stop it from going to sleep. I kind of picked this. Poetry is the language at its most distilled and most powerful. Poetry is the lifeblood of rebellion, revolution, and the raising of consciousness. In her own, Mary Oliver wrote, poetry is one of the ancient arts, and it begins, as it did with all the arts, within the original wilderness of the earth. And with that, thank you for coming. We are
Next
adjourned.
week, did you mention next week?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
I did my job.